What is that? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Shalom, it's pretty windy, quite windy here, quite windy. But I wanted to show you over there. I'm not sure if you can see what we see over there. Wow. Let's see if we can see a little better. The horns of Hittim. The horns of Hittim. Look at that. Wow. Look at that. It might be a little bit too windy for you to be able to hear me, so if you can't hear me, I'll go to somewhere where you can hear me. But I wanted to show you the horns of Hittim, such an amazing place, right there. And I'll tell you why. You might not know. Who knows what the horns of Hittim are all about? Other than the fact that they're a volcano, an old two volcanoes that came together, and the volcanic ash fell around the whole area, making it so fertile here in the Galilee. Do you guys know why the horns of Hittim is such an important place? Right there? Do you guys know? Who knows? Horns of Hittim. I'll tell you, it's more than just a volcano. It's a lot more. Do you know what have you ever seen Indiana Jones? Have you ever heard of the Templar Knights who were commissioned to guard the holy places of Israel? Yes, indeed. Welcome. Hey, Lisa, good to see you. Guy, good to see you. Sophie, good to see you. Tammy, David, Ephraim, Jeremiah. Woohoo! Good to see you guys. We're going to go out of the wind here, but I'm glad you got to see a good view of the horns. One more time. Horns of Hittim. Check it out. Right there. Woo-wee! The horns of Hittim are actually a very, 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 very special historic significance place, because at those very horns, that was the last stand, not of Custer. You might say Custer's last stand? No. Everyone's rushing home for Shabbat. Look at that. Rushing home. Everybody's rushing home. Yes, I actually have to run to the congregation. I'm actually leading the congregation today. People are dressing in white for Shabbat. Check it out. Getting ready for Shabbat. Isn't that amazing? But my point is that here by the Galilee, here by the Sea of Galilee, we're here out of the wind a little bit. Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better, a little bit out of the wind, is that I'm about to get ready for Shabbat myself. And so that's why I was a little late today, and we'll have to make this pretty short today. Because Shabbat is upon us. That's the time where we get ready to, rest, step into the rest. Step into the joy, step into the grace, we talked about Shabbat, how important Shabbat is to God. How long was Israel out of the land? 70 years when we were kicked out the first time, right? And that was in between the two temples. Reason being is that we didn't keep the Shabbat. And we need to keep the Shabbat. We need to rest. We need to relax. We need to turn off our phones. We need to not turn off our phones per se, but we need to definitely, look, everyone's rushing. Look at that. People are going back home to get ready, buy flowers for the wife. I got some flowers for my wife. I'm sure everybody's done that already. I'm sure everybody's got flowers for their wife. And you don't have to do that, but it's something nice. Father's Day passed, or it's the Father's Day weekend now. I took my kid camping. So I won't be able to talk too long. I just wanted to talk to you quickly and say Shabbat Shalom and tell you about the horns of Hittim. The horns of Hittim right over there that I just showed you moments ago. If you didn't see it, you have to rewind this and see the horns of Hittim, because it's a very significant spot. What it was is that there were Christians in Europe, okay? And so suddenly, since Constantine showed up and Helena, his mom, and they say, let's make this whole Christian religion, or followers of Yeshua, the Messiah religion, that instead of throwing them in the catacombs, instead of killing them, throwing them to the lions for sport, instead of what we've been doing, crucifying Yeshua, instead of that, what if we do something a little different? What if we would go ahead and adopt it? If you can't beat them, join them, right? So what if we would adopt it into our system, into our system? So that is what they decided to do, is to adopt it, to say, well, let's just adopt the faith into the Roman Catholic, into the Romans. Sometimes people don't even say Roman Catholic, but that's Romans, right? It's the Romans religion, right? So long story short, Constantine, Helena, Helena, not Helen of Troy, the mother of Constantine, the one that was in Germany. He lived in Germany. He had this beautiful house. The servants would put, I was there, in Germany, in Trier, which is spelled Trier, Trier, Trier. And they would put, the servants would heat, it's the only heated house. Nowadays you have air conditioning, but he had the only heated house in the world, because the servants would put underneath his house fire, and the clay would heat up in his house. It was amazing. But, so what I wanted to show you here as we get at the New Galilee. Woo! Shabbat Shalom to one and to all. Shabbat Shalom. So Constantine had a heated house. That wasn't the point of what I was saying. It's so windy, that's why I went over there, because it was windy. But I like to be over here. So, there's the Sea of Galilee. Horns of Hittim is right over there. I hope you can hear me still. The point of what I'm trying to say in short is that when Christianity, they said, let's not kill the Jewish people and the followers of Yeshua and torture them and throw them to the lions, and Nero burns Jerusalem and blames it on the believers of Yeshua. Instead of that, you can't beat them, join them. Let's adopt their stuff into our ethos, into our faith, into our religion, to our national religion. So that's where you have the beginnings of this. So what happens is they say, well, we better send some generals and send some people here to guard the holy places, okay? To guard and to free them from the Muslim rule, right? So you have Salah, or I don't know how you pronounce it, Salahadin, that's how we say it, Salahadin. You might say it Saladin or Salad, I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's Saladin is the Muslim general. He's the greatest Muslim fighter ever over here in the Galilee. And he says, I'm not going to let no Christians, no Europeans come here and try to set up some sort of a, the holy places, they're my places, so I'm not going to let it happen. So you have there, of course, Saladin fighting, the Muslim general, fighting against all kinds of Christians called Crusaders from Europe. People like Richard the Lionheart, the whole story of Robin Hood, right? And Sheriff of Nottingham, and Richard the Lionheart was fighting right here. Richard the Lionheart was fighting. And so they would put on the chainmail, they put on the helmet with the little thing, and they'd fight. And so here's what the trick that Saladin did, and I'm going to show you this right now. Saladin was kind of a smart general, this Muslim leader. And so here by the Sea of Galilee, all the animals and everybody wanted water. See, water is life. Water is a very, very important thing right there. And water is life. So what happens is Saladin says, hey, let's cut off the water. Let's make sure that the Christians, the Crusaders, let's cut off their water supply. So that's exactly what he did. He cut them off. And finally, after battle after battle after battle, they ended up, I don't know if you can still hear me or not, but whatever. They ended up at the Horns of Hittim, at the old volcanoes, right over there. The old two volcanoes. That's where they were. I was even going to go up there today and show you it. It's amazing there. Very fertile soil over here in the Galilee. But right there, at the Horns of Hittim, is where Saladin surrounded the Christians. Surrounded them. They had nowhere to go. and they couldn't get to the water. They couldn't get to the Sea of Galilee. They couldn't get down there to the water. So, and they also couldn't get to the springs nearby. They blocked them off, this Muslim general. And he says, we must protect the holy sites. And they said, no, you will not protect holy sites. I am Saladin. So they were over there below the Horns of Hittim, surrounded. Suddenly, the Muslim general said, you will light all fields on fire. That's the Arabic Muslim general. You will light fields on fire. So all these fields around this time of year are very dry. Right now, fires break out all the time. You saw Joshua Aaron's video the other day where fires came near the music house. Well, you got to be careful. Everything's very dry. Look at how dry it is. By the Sea of Galilee, it's all dry. So he said, light the fields on the fire. And I don't know, he didn't speak English, but what happened is they were so hot in their armor, in their chainmail with their swords, and they said they were stuck. They were trapped right over there at the Horns of Hittim, and eventually they had to flee all the way back to the ships, all the way back to Europe. King Richard the Lionheart, who fought and fought and fought here for years. Do you know the Pope Urban II, right? Pope Urban II said any Christian who fights to free this place from the Muslims, that they will receive eternal life and forgiveness of any sin. You can Google this. You can find this. Pope Urban, it's the Pope at that time, Pope Urban II. I grant you eternal life and forgiveness for you and your family. If you have a friend who's in trouble with the law, he will be forgiven completely because he has fought here and he's freed the holy sites. So that's what they were doing. They were fighting. Some of them themselves were criminals, trying to seek personal. And the Jewish history will share, well, yeah, we don't like getting killed, raped, murdered, robbed. I don't think that's what is supposed to be the Christian thing. So that is why you have, so windy here, right? We got to go to somewhere out of the wind. That's why you have a lot of people look at crusaders and they say, here in the Middle East, and they say, crusaders, they are so bad. They are Christians, they are so bad. You remember when the crusaders wanted to take Jerusalem? You remember what happened? They said every time we bring the turrets up to the walls of Jerusalem, the wooden turrets, and we try to battery ram the wall, well, they pour flaming oil on us, the Muslims, because it wasn't any more Jewish. Jerusalem then was taken by the Muslims. So they said what happens is they pour flaming oil on us, and so every time we bring the turret up, they shoot flaming arrows and it burns up. So then they said, here's an idea. One of Richard the Lionheart or whatever crusader, he says, I'm going to get out of the wind a little bit because it's just a little bit so windy. Can't hardly hear myself. But I wanted to show you Horns of Hittim. So here we go. So Sea of Galilee, of course, that way. Horns of Hittim that way. Let's see if we have a little less wind over here by this mountain. Yes. Don't worry, we have to do a pretty short one because I got to go. I'm preaching a message about fighting the good fight today. And what does it mean to fight the good fight? What does it mean to not fight the good fight? To choose a fight that's not your fight. To, that's quieter. Not so much wind blowing there in this, over here by this mountain. The mountain is blocking the wind. Isn't that cool? Anyway, long story short, wow, I can hear myself think. Long story short, the Crusaders who went to the Horns of Hittim to fight the Muslims were utterly and thoroughly defeated. You know the Custer's Last Stand, and you have the whole American history story of Custer's Last Stand. You remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo. Okay, they also had a fight, and I'm not saying this is fighting the good fight. I'm saying they had a fight, and they fought well, and they lit the fields on fire. Look how dry this is. If I lit this on fire right now, it would just burn. It would just burn right away, like it would burn. So they had to retreat. They went back to the ships. You have their Richard the Lionheart returned to the UK, returned to England. Of course, you have there waiting in England, Robin Hood. You know, if you know that whole story, and he's like, "Hey, I took care of the kingdom," and Sheriff of Nottingham was being naughty and being a ham. He was being naughty and being a ham. But and so he says, now let's kick him out and let's reinstate righteous rule, and this and that and this and that. Point is, who did they leave behind? They left behind the Templar Knights. The Templars, if you've ever seen Indiana Jones, you'll remember that Indiana Jones goes in this great adventure called the Quest for the Holy Grail. I don't know if you've seen it. And he goes to find the Grail, which was the cup of the communion, right? Which was the Passover cup. No one says that in the movie, which I'm a little mad at. When I go to say, Spielberg, dude, you're Jewish. Do you not know that that's the cup of Passover? That's the very cup that Yeshua raised, which is now the cup. It's the fourth cup or the third cup of Passover. I think it's the third cup. And you can write me what you think. And Yeshua raised that Passover cup on Passover, which just passed over recently. He raised it up and he said, this is my blood, which is poured out for you. And these matzahs, this is my body. This unleavened bread, this is my body. So that is the Holy Grail, they say. If you could find that cup and you drink of it, you'll have eternal life. And I'm like, you get eternal life anyway if you believe on Yeshua. So you don't need to find that cup. You don't need to go to Petra, where I was not that long ago, and go and try to find the Holy Grail. But that's what, Indiana Jones wanted to do, and in the movie. And he goes there, and who's waiting for him? A Templar knight, very old guy with supernatural age because he drank of that cup of communion, right? It's a movie, so it's not real. But the important thing is, he drank of that cup, and suddenly the Templar knight wasn't able to die, right? And so, though in reality, though, once they left over in Horns of Hittim, right over there, what I just pointed out to you, when they were defeated by Saladin, what happened is they left here a few guys to try to defend these holy sites. I don't know if Petra was one of them, and I don't think Petra is where the Grail was, and I don't think the Ark of the Covenant. Well, we could talk about, is the Ark of the Covenant in the Vatican? We could talk about everything. Right where you think the Ark of the Covenant is. I know that the Ark of the Covenant, according to the 2nd Maccabees chapter 2, we know that it was carried away because Jeremiah knew it was happening, took it to Mount Nebo. And so we can talk about getting metal detectors and finding it. We can talk about all that. That's fine. Other people say Queen of Sheba took it when she dated Solomon. And she has it in this place called Axum, Ethiopia. I was there. I didn't see it. You do have a Templar knight type person guarding it, who remains in silence. You're probably familiar with all this, but I don't want to rabbit trail. I want to get back to fighting the good fight, and I want to get back to what happened after the Crusaders left, and they left that volcano, those two volcanoes called the Horns of Hittim. What happens is they left Templar knights to guard the holy places. This is real. One of the Templar knight headquarters was under Tel Aviv. Do you know this? You guys know about this stuff? Underneath Tel Aviv, there was a Templar knight hideout. Templar knights they don't drink the Holy Grail like in Indiana Jones and stay old forever. And they're guys who hung out here. They made their own wine. They had cisterns. They made little Templar cities. They tried to survive without the backing of the Roman Catholic Church. They were some dudes who tried to survive, and many of them became lovers of Israel. Many of them realized, as after they read the Bible, that this is a story that's not over, a story that still unfolds to this day. And that's what I tell people every day. Even this Shabbat, it's a story of Israel. It's a story that's unfolding. It's a story that God is bringing back to the front of our agendas. The story of the restoration of Israel. It should be on the front of our agenda. And it will bless our neighborhood in Milwaukee. It will bless our neighborhood in Helsinki. It will bless our neighborhood in Kaifeng, China. It will bless it will bless our neighborhood in Delhi, India. So here's what happens. Templar knights were here, and they were fighting. One thing led to another. They little by little disappeared, and I'll tell you what happened. If you go to Akko, to the Crusader city, you'll go there and you'll see the history is that the Templars were turned, they were turned against by their own Crusader brothers. The Crusader brothers went back to the UK, went back to Europe, and they got their freedom of sins from Pope Urban II that I said. They were free from sin. What happened is when they returned to England, they said, hey, those Templars are like tour guides. They're like Chaim in the land of Israel. They're like touring people around and getting money, and we don't like that. They're getting so much money. They have ships full of money, and so they said, you know what we got to do? We have to say that they're somehow heretics, because they started more and more and more to say This is Israel. It's not about the Vatican. It's not about the Vatican. Wait a second. If you're a Roman Catholic Templar Knight, you better say it's about the Vatican and about the Pope. And they said, no, it's not about the Vatican. It's not about the Pope. It's about the Bible actually started from here, and the Bible says history will culminate here. So they said, that's heresy. That's heresy. All the Templars, including the one in Indiana Jones, come back to the UK and come for a trial. So they came for a trial, and what happened? They were burned at the stake. They were burned at the stake for heresy, for saying that Israel is really the center of God's plan, not the Vatican. So, I mean, that's essentially what I'm saying too. So, if you guys want to, if you're going to burn me at the stake, at least buy me a steak. I like it medium well, and I like it immediately. No, I was kidding. So my point is that that's the last stand of the Crusaders, and that is the last stand of the Templars. And now, after which, the last Templar hideouts actually were transformed in 1948. One of the former Templar hideouts was transformed because they were printing Bibles. They were printing Bibles, including the New Testament, printing Bibles, and underneath Tel Aviv, called Sarona, you can check this, you can go down there, have like a wine tasting, go down under Tel Aviv. You'll see there's these caves and these tunnels that go around under Tel Aviv. So if you go down there, you'll notice that underneath Tel Aviv, there is a place where they were printing Bibles. Now, when Ben-Gurion in Tel Aviv declared nationhood, he said, hey, we got to print, it's war, it's all-out war. We've got Muslims on us. We've got all these armies on us. And it's going to be astounding. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be, wonderful. But it's going to be dangerous to fight this good fight. To declare Israel is going to be very, very dangerous because all the Muslim armies want to kill us. So to wrap up, because I'm going to do this short, I got to get to the congregation because I got to share on fighting the good fight, and I hope you'll join and watch it, which I'll go live there at about 4 o'clock or whatever our time. Long story short, what happens is they were printing Bibles. Those were the very printing presses that were used for the very first documents of Israel's government under Tel Aviv. That's what Ben-Gurion used in time of war in those caves. He started printing our first ever government of Israel documents. The government of Israel declares a independence, statehood. The government of Israel declares freedom for all, with a respect to all religions and freedom for all here. So I think how the story unfolds is we can learn one thing. If someone's a crusader, they shouldn't be raping, killing, stealing, murdering, and all that stuff. In the name of Yeshua, that's not good. Number 2, Templars were part of them, but they were turned on by their own friends in England. So my whole thing is this. If they could have got to the Sea of Galilee, they would have survived, and they would have won the war because they had superior, tactics, military. They would have survived. They would have, but it wasn't to be. And they had to leave, and they were defeated by Saladin. So here's what my point of this whole thing is. What fight are we fighting, you and I? And I'll talk about this today. What fight are you fighting? It does say in Timothy, doesn't it? Didn't Paul tell Timothy, fight the good fight, run the race, keep the faith? Paul said himself, he says, I have fought the good fight. I have run the race. I have kept the faith. I have stayed my course. What fight are we fighting? What course are we staying? What? Are we fighting an incorrect fight? I know sometimes husband and wife might fight. Sometimes children and parents might fight. Sometimes employer-employee might fight. Sometimes militaries might fight. Sometimes people might fight because of faith-based reasons, like the Crusaders were doing. Sometimes people might fight for a lot of reasons. But are we fighting the good fight, keeping the faith, staying the course? What does that mean for us? How are we fighting? Ephesians 6, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers. We need to know our tools. Do you know that you can call in an airstrike? You're part of a team. You're part of a team like in the army. You can call in an airstrike if you want to. Meaning, You got the backing of the strongest power in the universe. Yeah, this isn't a Marvel movie, but you do have the strongest power in the universe. But we need to know that we got to be in God's plan, in God's way, for us to be able to, we're not going to say, Archangel Michael, go now and fight him. Fire, come down on him. That's what the disciples were saying, right? Same questions. Can I call fire down on that city? Can I call fire down on that city? Oh, come on. Love is what wins. Love is what wins the battle. Love is fighting the good fight. You can quote me on that. Love is fighting the good fight. How are we showing love? How are we winning the fight? How are we winning the war? And I want you, as you go into your Shabbat and as I go into my Shabbat and share about fighting the good fight, and what does that mean? To ask yourself, how am I fighting the good fight? How am I running the court, keeping the faith? How am I fighting the good fight? And I'll tell you what, if you fight God's fight, you've already won. No question there. You've already won. You could call in an airstrike if you want, because you have the backing. You've already won. There's no real fight. But if you fight the wrong fight, and here's an example. If you're someone who is trying to get into, let's say, a palace. Let's say you're going to a palace party over in, let's just say Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom ruled by King Abdullah. And you're like, you want to party at King Abdullah's palace. Okay, legitimate. And so you're like, hey, I want to try some of that meat and stuff, have a sword fight over in the palace. So then there's a guard comes and says, you're not allowed to enter here. You are not allowed to enter. And you're like, oh. Now, you could now go and try to fight a guard, or you could just quickly call King Abdullah. For example, I'm just giving an example. It's a random example. Hey there, I'd like to come to your palace for a little celebration, King Abdullah of Jordan. I'm here on a peace delegation from Israel. I wanted to say hi. Okay, well, guess what? Isn't that better than fighting the wrong fight? Look what you could have done. You could have swashbuckled your way into a hospital, or you could fight the good fight. See, you got to choose your battles. You sometimes have to lose battles in order to win the war. Do you know the war is already won? The war is already won. Now, many of you have studied Sun Tzu, as I have. Sun Tzu, the Chinese military advisor. And so he's written a book called The Art of War. Sorry, all these thorns over here. The Art of War. And he talks about battles. He talks about wars. He talks about strategies, tactics. Generals and people use this. I am, of course, a master sergeant in the Combat Engineer Corps of the Army here, the IDF, the Defense Force, defending the defenseless. And I think it's time that we say, what is our fight? What is our battle? And are we willing to fight the good fight and say, wow, if we're following God's will, it's going to be his bill. We've talked about that yesterday, but we got to know that fighting the good fight isn't going to be easy. And if any of you thought that the end of the Galileans was an easy end, it wasn't the end. It was just the graduation to the next level. Graduation. You play video games. Graduation to the next level. If you think that's going to be easy, well, it wasn't. What is it? Peter was crucified upside down. Thomas was speared with 2 spears. So on, Bartholomew, so on and so forth. I could go into all that. You know the story of the end of the Galileans, the biblical apostles, yeah? There's more now. There's more Galileans now. It's not easy. It's not easy to fight the good fight. Paul himself, was he beheaded in Rome at the hands of Nero, who blamed it all on the Jewish people or on the believers? Then he burned Rome himself and then said it's our fault. Not surprising. Nero. Didn't he behead Paul? I'm not sure, but he went to chains to Rome and sent Timothy over to, to Ephesus at the end of his life, sent Timothy over to Ephesus. And, of course, then at one point, Timothy, I don't know if you know this, you guys know this, Timothy, at one point, he was in Ephesus and they were worshiping Diana of the Ephesians, not Deanna. My wife's name is Deanna. Diana is a totally different name. Diana of the Ephesians. And they were bowing down to Diana. And she has these huge ruby eyes about the size of a fist. Each of the eyes is this huge statue. You probably know about this. And then at one point he said, what are you guys doing? And hey, slow down. I'm Timothy. I've been here trying to share with you the truth of the Messiah and the truth of hope for mankind, for every single cell of your body, the plan of the ages, the destiny of the species. I'm trying to hand you the destiny of the species here. You know, you want to research leptons, quarks, Higgs boson. You'll find out the destiny of the species. We know the destiny of the species. But here's the thing is then they said, Timothy, listen, bro, we're not having any of that. We want to go do our pagan thing. And so they had masks on and they were worshiping Diana of the Ephesians in Ephesus. And they beat him with clubs until he died. Was he fighting the good fight? You know the story of Timothy and each of these guys, each of the apostles, was he fighting the good fight? Yes, he was. Was Paul, who was beheaded, fighting the good fight? Yes, he was. Was Timothy, who was speared with 2 spears in India, fighting the good fight? Yes, he was. Was Peter, crucified upside down, fighting the good fight? Yes, they were. You just open up Fox's Book of Martyrs. You just open up Martyr's Mirror, and you're going to see people who fought the good fight, but it was through love. What it was is love, and they actually, in the stratagem of the cosmos, if I can be so bold, the stratagem of the cosmos, in this dimension, love wins. And probably every dimension, but love wins. So that's what I want to encourage you to do, is to fight the good fight and know that you're on the side of love. Always make a mistake on the side of loving instead of on the side of rejection. If you're going to make a choice, do I reject someone or do I love them? Always say, I love this person, and now, that was probably not a good idea. But at least you made a mistake on the side of receiving and loving instead of on the side of rejection, because that is the destiny of the species. That is the destiny of the species, including animals, lion and lamb, cobra and dogs. So it's in the Bible. Long story short, Shabbat Shalom to you all. Keep fighting the good fight. And main thing, remember the lesson of the horns of Hittim. Remember the lesson of the Templars. Remember the lesson of love. And how we all have a completion of a story to fulfill. You have a completion of a story to fulfill. I have a completion. We don't come on a blank canvas. We wish that we could be arriving to this world on a blank canvas, but we don't show up on a blank canvas. We arrive to a history and to a world that has been through a lot, and we have a part to play in this story. So with that, keeping it short, keeping it sweet, I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I want to wish you a great blessing. And if there's anyone we can pray for, if anyone has a prayer to win the war, to win the war and to fight the good fight, and not worry about the battles as much. But worry about winning the war, because he's already won it for us, right? So where we started, we'll end at the horns of Hittim, right over here. God bless you all. Let's pray. Lord, we just pray a huge blessing on everyone who has put their prayer requests in today and every day. We just thank you, Father God, that you are watching out for us and that the battle is won because of the love you've shown. And we thank you for how you've proven that to us in our own life, so we know it's true. And we just pray that this Shabbat we would learn more and more about love, about shalom, and about victory, winning the battle of the horns of Hittim. God bless you all from the Galilee, my friends. See you soon.